Hello and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark and thank you so much for coming. We are continuing in a series that I call Characters of the Bible or Bible Characters, and I've subtitled it A Walk Through the Bible on my YouTube channel. And basically we're just taking stories of God interacting with different humans and that sort of thing to try and understand what the Bible is about, in what direction it goes, how does God deal with everybody in the Bible, and essentially we get an insight to the overview of the issues between mankind thinking he can work his way to God's good graces and make himself right before God, and why it is that God, in his eternal plan, was to provide for us a way back to him after they sin. And that is really what the whole series is about. So in the first two, I should say, lessons, we looked at the creation of everything, the creation of the universes and the world, and how it is that points to a great and perfect God. We also see the perfection of the creation itself. God is pleased with everything. And then we got into chapter 2 and we see that God creates a helper for Adam. He creates a woman. And it's important to see that because moving forward through the scriptures, a man and a woman are to be joined together and they are to be married. Jesus himself talks about that later in the scriptures, many, many years after creation, and the importance of it. And chapter 2 just shows the beauty of how God created one being from another being. Everything else was made from dust. Everything else was made from the ground. But womankind was made from a man. And so that depicts the importance of the man and woman being together, being joined together. We call it marriage. And today we solidify those things with vows and those sorts of things. And we're going to talk about marriage at some point, but just not yet. Okay, so we're going to get to chapter 3 here. And chapter 3 is known as we see the fall of mankind. And we're going to get into that, and I have questions on my blog that I don't answer. I'm not going to answer them anymore. This is something that, as we study, I put out the kind of questions that I ask myself. And that's what I was putting out to the high school class back in the day, was all the different questions I have. So before I read it, I'm going to tell you what the questions that I have are. We're going to read chapter 3, and we need to see what sin or sins did Adam and Eve commit. And you can just figure it out for yourself, right? Obviously, they're going to disobey God, and then they're going to try and cover it up. And that's the basic part of it. And then we're going to look at verse 8. They hear God walking in the garden. And so what's going on there? And in verses 9 through 11, how does God know that they sin, right? God knows they sin. So what's going on here? And now it's important to see this because in chapter 2, the last thing you see or you read is the fact that they were both naked, but they didn't even know it. And so you ask the question, well, where they weren't ashamed about it, right? They knew that they were naked, or they didn't even think about it because they didn't know what sin was. So we're going to look at Adam and Eve and how they are answering God and the answers that they have about it, and how does it remind us of us? Okay, we need to look at that. And from this point on, they're separated from God. So the question is why, right? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because God is perfect. And once we understand sin and we become these creatures that seek after sin, or we become these imperfect beings, God isn't going to associate with us in that sense. And there are other things going on as well that we don't see, like, God's glory is not something we can take as humans. It will kill us. We find that out later with Moses. Then, we also need to look at this serpent, right? Later on, we find out that Satan is the father of lies. And this is the first time we're going to see lying happen. So Satan is equated to this serpent for that reason. And in verse 1, it says that he's crafty or subtle. And what does that mean? Well, obviously, it means that he's really good at deceiving people. And describe how the serpent deceives Eve. And then I talk about reading these verses and seeing how the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life come into play. That's how he deceives her. He plays on her desires. And that's just every day. That's all of us. It's not, this story about Adam and Eve isn't so we can go, oh, wow, they made a big mistake. No, this is all of us. And that's how the Bible works. We read the Bible a lot of times, and it comes to a part where maybe the Jews are doing something and it's like, why are they worshiping idols again? They should know better. And that's not why God put that there. Okay, God put these things here because that's you. You do that. I do that. That's the problem. And so God fixes that, of course, through Jesus, and that comes later. So my question is, has Satan's temptations changed over the years? No, they have not. We might think we're a lot better, a lot smarter, a lot more, more refined than those people back then. We're not as superstitious. No, but Satan still does the same thing, and it probably works easier now than it does back then because we think things are superstitious. And when I ask the question, what are Satan's lies today? It's the same thing. He lies to us the same way. Oh, yeah, God says you're not supposed to do that, but you really want to do it, don't you? That's how he works. He keeps tempting us. And then we're going to get into this last additional thing that I wanted to add, and I think it's the most important part of the story, and we'll get into that. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Think about all these questions. Now the serpent was more crafty than the beasts of the field which the Lord had made. And he said to the woman, indeed has God said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden? The woman said to the serpent, from the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat. But from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die. The only restriction. The only restriction. The serpent said to the woman, you surely will not die. For God knows, in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So here he is telling her, look, you're not going to die. And he's right in a sense, isn't he? You're not going to die. When the woman saw, so what does that do? Well, that she's like, okay, so now she's thinking about her desire. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate, and she gave to her husband with her, and he ate. So Adam's right there, okay? This isn't like Adam wasn't there, and he's like, hey, what's going on? He's a part of this deal. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. Okay, so there you go. Chapter 2, they didn't know this. Now they know. Now they have a conscience, and they have a conscience about sin. They have a conscience about being immodest even. And so what do? And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. They heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So God is dwelling with them in a sense. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden. So they're hiding in the trees. Then the Lord God called to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" Like God doesn't know, right? He's like a dad here. He's like, what did you guys do? All right, he just takes it slow. Where are you? He said, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who told you you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? The man said, the woman you gave to me to be with me, she gave to me from the tree and I ate. He's pointing a finger at his wife. Ay, ay, ay. Then the Lord said to the woman, what is this you have done? Like God doesn't know, right? He's letting them own up to their sin. And the woman said, the serpent. Yeah, it's him, God. He deceived me and I ate. The Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you more than all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life, and I will put enmity, and here's the important part, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. And some versions say, basically, he will crush you, Satan or serpent. To the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain, you will bring forth children. Yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And I take that to mean something quite simple, like it says, your husband's going to have rule over you. And even though you're going to have children and it's going to be very painful, you're still going to desire your husband. Now, some people say that what this means is that the rule part means that the woman would rather have the rule than the husband. And that might be the case in some marriages. I mean, yeah, that happens all the time. And I think in most marriages, the husband lets the wife take charge of a lot of things. Why not? But I don't know if I think that this means that a woman's constantly going to be trying to take over her husband's position. Maybe so. I just think it means what it says. When you have a child, it's not going to feel good. It's going to hurt. And yet, even though that happens, you're still going to desire your husband. Then to Adam, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree about which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat from it, cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall grow for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, from the dust, and from the dust you shall return. So there you go. That's the fall of man. And the curse on Adam, of course, is that he's going to have to work his whole life. And it's never going to be easy. And if you've ever tried to grow a garden, even a small garden, like a little square, animals come in and try to eat it, and you might put a cage over it, and the insects try to go in there and eat it, and you try to get rid of the insects, and then some kind of fungus comes along and eats it, and all the work you did goes for nothing, and I'm speaking from experience. And this is just the way it's going to be. Verse 20, now the man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all the living. The Lord made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. so they could be more modest. Then the Lord God said, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might stretch out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." Therefore, the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. So he drove the man out at the east of the Garden of Eden. He stationed the cherubim and the flaming sword, which turned every direction to guard the way to the tree of life. And I'm making the assumption that the tree of life is no longer there. So don't go looking for it, okay? It's not the point. If you want the tree of life, look to the cross. There's your tree of life. So what's the big deal about this? Well, from here on forward, a lot of bad things are in store for mankind, right? They can die now. They will die. They will die not only this physical life, but because now we know about sin, now that we have an understanding of desire, and we have this understanding of what temptation is even. Remember, they were naked before each other, and there was nothing there for them to think about for sin, but now they know about it. Now they know what it is. So that's the point. From that point, moving forward into the scriptures, we have to know this. Because mankind has a propensity to sin, God has separated himself from mankind. And now God is going to be opposite of man instead of walking in the garden where man is, okay? He is now separate and separated from man, not because he hates mankind, but because mankind has made himself unavailable to God on that basis. So moving forward, mankind has an understanding, he will have an understanding that God requires sacrifice for all the things that we do wrong, for all the things we might have done wrong even. And that is something that is going to dictate how God relates to man. Now, I think in the next story, we're going to talk about how sin proliferates, and we see one brother murder another brother, and it proliferates even from there. And we'll get into that as well. So, thank you for coming by and just looking at this short synopsis of, especially these first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 chapters, where we see God making everything and establishing who he is, and then man rejecting that and making who he is in relation to God. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.